in too many crashes and errors and stuff like that. So let's just jump in. And I'm just going to start with a pretty basic scene. So this SOP create, this gives you a node that you can double click and jump into, and then you're in SOP context. You can do SOP based modeling, and you see that the viewport here switched from like the stage view. Now I'm in like a Houdini OpenGL view. I can't switch renders or Hydra delegates. But if I go back up, now I'm still in the Solaris viewport, or the stage viewport. So I could go into Karma this way and actually get like a render or whatever. So if you're just working kind of like on one-offs or making your own little projects or stuff like that, I think eventually it will be pretty powerful to work this way, just because you're able to kind of support multiple renderers without running around and like doing a bunch of stuff later. If you just work this way from the start, you will always be able to switch renderers if you need. So that would be my advice, is like, if you can plan a project, support as much stuff until the very end when you need to do maybe like little tweaks, render specific tweaks of post effects, or sometimes on lights you need to do little settings that are like the spread of the light, like certain renders might not support that or whatever. But we'll just go in here, and then I'm gonna do some basic randomization of the point colors. I'm gonna switch this to primitives, and you can pin this view if you want to just stay like at the render view or whatever, and then you have a live render going all the time. So that's the other thing that's like more exciting with this, is that we're able to work with a viewport that's better than the OpenGL one that we've always had. And you can either use the tab menu to add lights. So here, this is called the dome light instead of environment light, like it's usually called at the object level. Or you can also just click still at the shelf. I have my shelf condensed just to the labels to more efficiently use space or whatever, but we can click environment light. You can place it somewhere. I think if you just push enter, it just puts it at the origin. It doesn't really matter too much. Then we have a dome light added. And similarly, like always before, working at the object level or the previous just object context, you can control click on things like the area light if you want to add it from the view that you're looking in or whatever. So there's maybe a few kind of gotchas or whatever, but overall the workflow, I would say, for just quickly making like a scene or a little kind of 3-point light setup or something like that would be pretty similar to what we were doing before. So I'm just gonna, I think you can bypass things if you want to turn them off, like the light. There's also more advanced things like that you can do later on in the chain if you wanted to do like edit properties. I think this way. Might not be that, it might be like render properties. Light edit, that was the one I was looking for. So if I wanted to get a specific light that's in my, should be able to get it this way. There's a little, I don't know, I'm still getting used to the UI and stuff like that of everything. So I think if you paste it in like that, it should be able to, so if I turn it back on, then later in the chain, I could do specific kind of overrides or edits or something like that. So you could maybe multiply with the existing light color and do some red tint. So it's a more like non-destructive way of working, I guess, more visual. So if you wanted to support two different times of days or environments or something like that, you can start to split your tree out, and you could have like two different render branches. One would be this main daylight environment or whatever, and then one would be this like tinted romantic funny, like, I don't know, you put a gel over the light or whatever to tint those colors. And then of course you can you can just work like this as well. So if we just wanted to eliminate the HDRI or the environment light from this branch altogether, you can. So that's another advantage. And then maybe as you're thinking like supporting multiple shots or working on an entire sequence, it's a lot less data to manage, or scenes or files or whatever. Like just anytime I was trying to do multiple light setups in the old object context, it would turn into a mess because there's no like visual indication even of what light is enabled or disabled, and there's not really an easy way to like, I mean, they do have some stuff like light groups and everything like that, but there was just never a visual way to do stuff. So this kind of branching structure and everything like that is pretty cool. Yeah, doing different light passes is easier, and then like I was showing here with this override, it's easier. I think the whole time we're constructing this, there is a kind of naming convention and stuff like that. So if we look at the Solaris scene graph, these lights are automatically getting placed just under this global light. I think it's like a group or it's just a transform. So this is kind of like the Maya outliner, or I mean, we had similar hierarchies or whatever, but this is always being created along with what you do over here visually. And if you wanted to, maybe you only want this light for your volumes or your VDBs or something in this actual primitive path, I think you could put like VDB like that, and then those are under their own transform node. So even doing kind of expressions, or people would turn on or off objects or visibility for certain lights or sets of lights. So this is more of just like a folder structure, and it makes it easier to ignore or just manage which lights are hitting which stuff or whatever, if that makes sense. So you're always able to just more cleanly or better organize your scene structures this way. So I'm going to turn off this point jitter, and can maybe just add a shader to this. I think this material library is like the closest equivalent to how I would usually work before. Like at the object level, I would usually do this material network and just toss stuff in there. This material library to me is similar. Black Uku, yes, I'm still in Portugal. Yeah, I'm getting hopefully into a regular swing of things. So you can double click on this one, and I think this USD MaterialX subnet, from what I've been reading, what I think this should be the most future-proof or universal, I would say. So even though we're using USD, there's a universal scene description, you can still do specific materials. Like if I did a redshift material, that wouldn't be universal. It would only work with redshift. So this is hopefully the most universal way of building a material. And the MaterialX stuff is interesting. You can look into it, but was developed by like ILM and some other companies or partnerships, I believe. And it's supposed to be a pretty good kind of uniform way of describing just material properties and how it responds to light. Shauna's CCCCC, how's it going? So yeah, we have a material subnet, and this is like the surface here, and then I think so many tabs. Yeah, I need to get, it's like the Houdini, just as soon as you start it up, it's like you have 80 tabs open. So I think in here, if we go to PBR, they have a standard surface. I think that's what I've usually been using. So instead of using this preset one or whatever, you can just pop this one in. And then I'm just gonna set this maybe to red for right now, just to kind of do a sanity check to make sure it's working. Meu Deus. And we can do an assignment within the same node. Julian, or Juan, how's it going? I'm doing pretty good. Getting a little hot for me today here. I think part of it's because my graphics cards are heating me up as well. It's raising the temperature like 5 degrees in this room. But yeah, I don't know. Anytime it gets to 30 or above, it's a little too hot for me. But other than that, I'm doing well. So yeah, we can do an assignment. This is like the geometry we want to apply the material to. In this case, I think we could do like all geometry primitives. And I think this asterisk here just will automatically find that material we just made. If you want to be more specific about it, you should be able to grab it like that. So this one should be like materials. It should show up when I've tried it before. Or you can drag and drop stuff from this over here if you want as well. In Spain, yes, Spain is pretty hot as well. There was some wind and storms recently as well. Hopefully it didn't hit you too bad. So I think this way, if you have more than one material, you can just do maybe one that's like yellow. You should be able to specify which one you are choosing. Maybe we don't want that. I think I might have mixed up some things. So I think with this one, we can do it. That's always been my hang up with some of the Solaris stuff, is that there's, to me, just at the start, like too many boxes, and they need, I don't know. I mean, I know that it's intended to support like massive departments with tons of assets, and like they need these capabilities, but I wish that there was just like a light version or a simple version or something of it. But I think once you get the hang of it, it's a little bit more straightforward. Yet it was 43 a month, a little over a month ago here, and it was quite a, I don't have AC, and it was definitely quite a bit to get through that period. So that's one capability that we can do with the materials. And if we want to get information from the geometry, I think you can do, it like this. And then I think that they have it as display color. And then if we just turn it back to white, okay. And then we need to plug this into a thing that isn't a scalar or a black and white thing. So this is one kind of gotcha, but basically CD that we were always using before is proprietary Houdini thing. The display color is meant to be more universal, or like for other, if you're in Maya and you're using USD, it would be the same syntax or the same variable or whatever that you would use. So that's pretty cool. We can do some geometry. It's not properties, but you can get some other things here. We could get position. If you wanted to do these object space passes or whatever, and you can even do some simple mathematical stuff. Z8 editing, how's it going? It's, yeah, stumbling our way through Karma here. So you can do some basic mathematical operations as well with some of these nodes. And it might be somewhat useful sometimes. Use Ubuntu, the Houdini hips in Ubuntu. Show me the icon. I'm not sure. I think I tend not to worry too much about those issues. I mean, for me, I think it says, it just kind of looks like a text file or whatever. You might have to do some customization in the GNOME or in the tweaks or something like that. In terms of that stuff, but for me, I mean, most of the Linux stuff I just give up. I don't really try to fiddle with the desktop too much to get it working exactly the way I want it. I've tried that before in the past and realized it's kind of a Sisyphusian task. It's just like, you can never really get everything looking exactly the way you want it. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there's maybe if you do enough searching and stuff, you could find a way to like override it. So we can do some simple expressions here. Houdini does have a material baking. I think that you can do one in Karma as well as Mantra. It's definitely built in. Then there's some labs tools or whatever to do some baking to assist you in that process as well. So you can do some interesting stuff with that. Extra nodes. How's it going? I don't know why this. Another thing you can do is you can get this correction toolbar. I'm a pretty big fan of that, just because it lets you easily like look through different components here if you need to and see what's going on. It's pretty cool. So let's maybe do this one. So this is like the maximum vector component of the RGB or XYZ channels. And then I think I can just do the remap. So it's, you get the idea, basically. Redshift, VOPs, like we all are doing similar operations, but they just have the node names are like slightly different sometimes, or the UI is a little bit different, but all of these are basic math functions that you might be doing pretty regularly or whatever. So you can do maybe something like this. And I think another thing people usually do is this smooth step when you're doing shading stuff. This tends to give you a better looking kind of roll off or result or whatever. When you're, instead of linearly going from 0 to 1, that gives you a little bit better result, like just visually more pleasing or whatever. And then lastly, if we want to change this frequency or whatever, we can do that. Maybe do 20 by 20. So we have a little fancy grid system or something like that. And if you want, you can do the other cool things. So we can do this height to normal. We'll take this will be our input. We'll just start with a lower value here. Whoop. And we'll put this down here into normal. So you'd see hopefully some stuff shifted a little bit. I think if I take this light and just move it lower, like a glancing angle, we should see a little bit more response with that little bump map stuff. And then we can take off the base color. We should see it start to actually apply this kind of bump map effect to everything. So we have a little Pac-Man, is like a Mega Man level or whatever. Maybe I'll go into ACES just so it's not like blowing out as much or whatever. And then for this ACES stuff, I'm just using the labs preferences. You can just check these boxes on, or the other ones just for the viewport background. But if you want the ACES stuff, I think you can just hit apply and then restart and get that. So yeah, we have our little Lego table or whatever, Duplo table. Do maybe a little bit less. And right now we're pushing the center of these squares up or whatever. If you want to do it the other way, they have this complement here that will do it, that will basically flip it around. You can also, basically, if you want to redo or do something similar to the complement, if you just do another range, or maybe the remap is a little bit simpler. The labs preferences, so you have to install labs when you're doing Houdini, so you get the shelf or the thing here, and then you have some different options, and you can do labs preferences, and then you can manage ACES there, or you could do it with environment variables or anything like that. Kira, thank you for the Prime subscription. I appreciate it. So another way to do the Studio Not War. Thank you for the tier 1. Let's go. Bora. Yeah, these might be new capabilities they added to labs somewhat recently that makes it a little bit nicer. I don't know, I still like the Redshift way of handling ASIS where they bundle it with the plugin or whatever, and you don't have to worry about managing extra libraries or whatever. So yeah, we could do a complement here, and we'll just flip this around. And then here, if I go into negative numbers, we're basically lowering. I could turn on maybe the grid. It might make more sense. But basically, it's kind of not working that well because it's just a bump map or a trick like that. But basically, I'm trying to just push that area down, and I want this area here or whatever to stay flat. So that's all we're doing with this remapping here, is instead of pushing the middle part up, we're just lowering the other areas or whatever. So we can do that. All that stuff is pretty cool. And if we want to combine back in now our base or our attribute color, we can work modularly or whatever, like, and combine things like that. So that's pretty cool. Let's take a quick diversion here. I'm going to save this scene file. I'll put it on the server or whatever in the chat so you guys have it. And then I'll write this out and try to put it in the USD view application. See what's going on. With a disco, yeah, we could do update this seed with a new random, maybe every 10 frames. We probably want this to round down to the nearest whole number, just in case. So can do some stuff like that and have some interesting parties on the floor. And I'll go ahead and save this now. Just call it maybe USD MaterialX. What is this? 23? Ross Mason, thank you for the Twitch Prime. Let's go. All right, so we'll do this as scenes, and this will be maybe Solaris. I don't know. Solaris, it basically means USD to me. So it's kind of, if you're switching between the two of them or whatever, it can be a little confusing. So I'm gonna try to just stick to the more universal terminology when I can. So, ooh. Maybe I forgot to copy my scripts over. Yeah, I was just actually putting Houdini 19.5 on my stuff as well. It's possible I need to reorganize my scripts a little bit. I can always just distribute this on the Discord if it doesn't work out. So we have the file saved. I think you can also do USD ROP directly inline here. So if we want to save our USD file, maybe I'll just put it in the temporary directory. So you can just use $temp like that if you're just quickly testing things or whatever. And I think we can just leave it with defaults for right now. I'll give that a try. And then I think I need to disable my Redshift Pixar plugin to keep it from crashing. And then we should be able to get that USD view application to open up. Pretty blank on the USD. Yeah, it depends how you're saving the things with this layering. It definitely should support it. I think I have some other USD files somewhere on my disk maybe that we could look at later. But yeah, it's definitely possible to bundle and condense all that stuff in. Oof. Still not happy with it. Let me I'm gonna just try pulling it up with a different one. If you're doing labs for ASUS, it's just like a convenience function, basically. Like you can manage the environment variable and stuff like that yourself, or you could do it just using the checkbox. Some of the lab stuff is basically like this reset viewport, just convenience functions or whatever. That's, I don't know. I mean, it's not. Maybe they think SideFX should provide that like as a built-in function or whatever, but basically it's just a shortcut to try to make things easier or whatever. So other people using Houdini for the first time like don't have to get too caught up in environment variables and things like that. Let's see if we can get Karma. Somehow my lights, oof, so that's a little buggy. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, I think Karma has some issues, or I would say like Solaris USD stuff. It's a little tenuous in some areas, but we'll just keep going for right now, and then get close to wrapping this up. Let me. All right, so yeah, we'll just keep going for right now. Okay. So if you want to work, sometimes it's more quick, more responsive, you can uncheck that and you'll get back into the SOP level. I'm just going to start maybe with a box this time. We'll make it a little wider. And all right, hold on a second. I think something, I'll be back in one moment. All right, sorry about that. So yeah, we'll do a box. I'm just gonna make it like thinner, something like that. So just gonna make a quick kind of blobby shape. And this is going to be our base geometry or whatever. Just something irregular. We'll do a scatter, just a traditional scatter, and turn off the relaxation, and maybe just do some of them. If you want to actually use it, this cloud, this is a quickest, simplest way to actually just do like mesh to volume, I think. Previously, maybe people would do ISO offset, but this cloud does it with VDB volumes and stuff like that. So this should now be putting stuff like inside of the surface. And can keep doing VDB stuff. So if we want to do VDB from particles, then we get our little blobby. And we can even maybe do randomize, and we want to randomize p-scale. That's just a one-dimensional thing, just a single like scalar value, and just get even more randomness. You can even do the custom ramp, and then you have really nice capability here to shape the distribution of your randoms. So let's do that. Maybe we want the minimum to never be like 0, but something a little bit smaller. All right. Something like that is okay. And then we'll convert from particles back to polygons. If you want to make this mesh smoother, you could either Z8 editing. Thank you for the tier 1. You can either change this voxel size, or another thing you can do is a volume or VDB resample. So if you want to adjust the resolution or stuff like that later on, you can use this in the voxel scale, and lower numbers here is like a higher resolution. It's like setting the size of each voxel. So smaller voxels is more detail. So we have that, and then I'm going to use the points here to fracture, or to slice up this shape. So it doesn't show up all that well. I think we might want the normal. Maybe we don't want the interior surface. I don't know how it might be doing like a fuse operation. I don't know where it's getting those artifacts from. So you could just go maybe even higher resolution, or it's possible putting a smooth SDF node in here. Maybe the resample node is like exaggerating some artifacts or like sharp edges in that area that is causing some issues. So we have this, And then I think another useful attribute is this cell PT. This should actually be the corresponding point number. If we turn these on, we can go into the guide font size. And let's just get a better background here. So the cell PT primitive attribute here is basically going to be the point that we cut it with. Yeah, I converted it. It depends what you're trying to do, but there is actually a ton of tool sets and stuff like that for doing cutting operations like similar to Voronoi with VDBs. I think it never really took off that much because you lose some UVs and things like that on your input geometry. You can definitely do kind of volumetric fracturing with VDBs. You might be able to do some interesting stuff with it, but for the most part, I haven't seen a lot of people putting it in use. So DreamWorks that developed VDB made a paper about it and stuff like that. And I mean, in theory, there's some interesting capabilities and stuff because it has the adaptivity when you're meshing it. So you could do nice fine detail only where you need it. Let us fracture volumes in real life. So I don't know. I mean, I think that there's definitely uses for it. Like if you're doing things in the background of your shot that aren't hero assets, maybe a mountain or something like that, you could get some interesting results doing VDB fracturing. But for the most part, I just haven't seen a lot of people using it. But yeah, I'm just using it here after I converted this back to the surface. And then we can do another randomize. And I'm going to put it there and set it to primitives. And we're getting a random for each face. So it looks like an old style TV where there's no antenna reception. But you can actually use the seed attribute and we can set that to cell PT. And then we have a consistent color, the big gumball. So now we have a consistent color, and I'm actually just going to optimize this a little bit so we can get a faster cook time. I'm going to maybe just add some noise here. So we can take the P point position, add noise to it, and have it animated over time. So we have a little swarm. I usually turn the roughness down just so things aren't as jittery. So we're doing that. I'm going to turn that ring off. So things are still working pretty quickly. And the interesting thing about doing it this way is that our random colors will stick, or it's not going to change or flicker or anything like that, because we're using that cell PT attribute that's based off of the point number that we're fracturing everything by. So this is an interesting way that you can dynamically kind of texture or pattern things without having temporal artifacts or things jittering over time or whatever. And if we want to fix up some of these artifacts, maybe we could do a little bit of smoothing. And let's get back up to the, let's just save this just in case. And we'll get back up to the stage. So you can see some stuff is kind of working. The texture stuff that I made is just using 2 coordinates of the position, so it's gonna stretch like that on the edges. And then our light is, we're not getting like other shadows because it's just a directional light, so things look a little bit weird. Let's move that light back into the main group, and I'm gonna put our dome light back in there as well. This area light, let's make it a little bit bigger so we don't have like these sharp, crisp shadows. And then as we make it bigger, it's going to be brighter, just because like it's the way that light works. So we have something that our gumballs look a little bit better now. Let's see what happens without the dome light. And I don't know, I'm somewhat partial, like going into a darker gray background. Sometimes when you're using the stage, just because it's going to look a little bit more like the final render and it's less distracting without that stuff in. And then with these lights, if you want to disable things, like you think it's getting distracting, or you want to do a flip book and have it look more like the render, you can always turn on and off the display of UI elements or whatever that are over your render or viewport if you want to. So we have this. I'm just going to reduce the dome light a little bit. Now I think the area light might be maybe a little bit too bright. And let's get back into the material. So if we want to uncheck that for a little bit, we can see what we're getting just with the color attribute we're pulling in from the geometry. Might want to introduce a little bit more roughness in the specular. Just get things looking a little bit smoother, or just the like less sharp of we're making increasing roughness, but it's visually it's like a smoother looking highlight, if that makes sense. Is the audio, is it not working? Oh no, I think it should be working. Okay, so I'm also going to try to maybe rework this. Maybe you need to restart your browser tab. So I'm going to try to maybe rework this. Rework this to see if I can not have it as waffly. So I don't know what some portion of this we're losing the other component of the sine function, I think. We should be getting a third. Ooh. Somehow it's just like very small in Y or something. Let me try going into world space. Maybe this multiply. Ah, I see. I see what I did to myself there. So I was just working quickly earlier when I was working with the grid and just skipped that other parameter. And then I think in this case, because it is 3D or whatever, we might need to reduce some of our thresholds. Or I think I need to get back my maximum component. Maybe this one, we'll try it with the little round dots. Trying to make a it's going to be the humans versus the DALL-E with the word prompts. All right, so we have these little things happening in here. Trying to see if it might be my absolute value. I was hoping to see some of these, like we should be seeing maybe some negative numbers. I'm just going to leave it like this for now. But yeah, this is another pattern that might be somewhat cool. And this should be hooked up to keep using it as the normal. And we can get our color textures plugged back in. I don't know if my normals are too, it's like an artifact from trying to poke that stuff too high. I think if you press the D key as well, you might see some somewhat specific render settings or whatever to adjust some of this stuff. You might have to set it on the, you might have to actually make like a render node as well. But there's definitely some karma specific oof. Oh, think that's the one I wanted to do. Might be the render products. Might just be render settings. I think this one should be good. Let's make a camera. Get rid of this other junk. So I think here under geometry and shading, you could try increasing this dicing quality. That might resolve some of those artifacts. Could be like a ray biasing thing. I'm not 100% sure. Shading quality. XPU, is this a better result? I don't know, it's bizarre. All right, so let's go back into our material and get our bump map back a little bit higher. I think it's they're just different enough that it's you have maybe better luck with one or the other. I'm gonna go a lot higher with this pattern frequency. I mean, it's running on GPU, and then when you render it CPU. The XPU is like an Intel initiative, I think, thing basically that's designed to like leverage both your GPU and your CPU at the same time. And then CPU is strictly just CPU. So that's basically this XPU stuff should be allowing your GPU to help out. I don't know what the simplified. Got a lot of buttons to click here. Oof. Oh no. All right. So that's yeah, that's pretty much everything. There is, I think they added some light textures as well. If you go to this, these might have been around for a little bit, but I think since 17, Houdini 16 or 17 or something like that. But because we're using Karma, we can use these .rat texture files. It is one thing you might have to be worried about is if you're trying to support other renderers, like you would have to convert these textures to a .htr or more universal file format or whatever. But let's just keep going for a little bit. Try to start wrapping things up. Trying to see if there was a way to get rid of the, I guess just clicking on the mouse to get rid of that selector. Might be under this. Stuff. We'll just keep going. You think it's this one? I feel like I don't know, like it's some. Ooh. I feel like there should be another one maybe that's. I need to investigate some other stuff maybe. Yeah, I think it's hard to know with Karma. I mean, Arnold is definitely like the highest quality overall, I would say, just because it's the most stable. Like, there's the least amount of like hacks or unexpected stuff happening. And with Karma, there's definitely quite a bit of unexpected stuff still happening. With Redshift, there's like a decent amount, but it's fast enough that people are willing to work through it. But I think it just depends on how much time the developers and stuff put into it. It's probably always going to be a pretty nice thing to be able to use because it's ships with Houdini and the licenses like they come with Houdini basically, so you don't have to worry about running out of, like, as long as your render farm is using it, you don't have to worry about having people buy extra licenses. So if you're running extra passes or you really want to be efficient with your financial resources, it's definitely worthwhile to at least know enough to like kick some stuff out. So I would say it's definitely worth it to know, but at the same time, I don't know any production studios of like motion graphics or film that have adopted it yet, but it's definitely worthwhile to start learning, I'd say. The gumball, gumball waffle cone combination. Maybe with this light HDRI a little bit brighter. Let's just build ourselves a little studio setup. I'm not sure if you can do this opcolon stuff. I think it should be possible, but I haven't tried it myself. There's definitely parts where they're doing that op syntax stuff. Like if you were to investigate, I would recommend using the pig head and seeing what's going on there. Maybe they've already converted it to a USD file. But I know the pig head is an interesting one to look at if you're just want to see how they're kind of encapsulating assets and stuff like that. So you also have some other utilities. You can do USD cat. That should just spit out like the outputs, the contents of the USD file. So if you're just visualizing, like basically like looking at the rib archive, like a VR scene or something like that, you can see what's going on, how it's constructed or whatever. But if you really want to get into the fundamentals of it, you can see how they're kind of putting things together, I would say. Ooh, somehow I got to this side with like the rim light. This inherits some transforms or something. So I'm just gonna do this pretty standard backdrop studio light setup. We'll do the bending. Whoop. And I guess it might be a little bit of a pain that you can't like see the other objects in that view, but let's just go into the GL viewport. To be, I think overall they just still need to do more like parity, or like have stuff looking the same when you're jumping between these other contexts. All right, we're back. We're in the 1980s now, constructing our scene. trying really hard not to learn LOPs. Yeah, I mean, it's at least time, I would say, to trying some basic stuff out and slowly getting comfortable with it. But overall, I mean, there's tons of really advanced features and stuff like that. If you're working in a big facility, it makes more sense to like really take advantage of USD and its capabilities. But if you're just interested in constructing simple scenes and maybe passing off assets or USD files, worthwhile to start exploring. I think with people still spread out and working like somewhat remotely, being able to know how to like optimize and store data efficiently and exchange it over servers and stuff like that, like USD is definitely going to be really useful, and just for working collaboratively efficiently, like has a lot of potential for that. All right, so let's see if our stuff is working. So we can maybe do another material assignment here. So all of our materials we made are in that library, but if we want to do an extra material assignment, I think we can grab it. I think I can do another material assignment on this node here. So we're going to do the other material subnet, and I think instead of doing all the geometry, I think you can do it by the name like this, but I'm not 100% sure. So this one is explicitly getting the material one, and everything else now should be getting the first material. Or maybe we need to explicitly tell it to use the grid. Okay, so now it's working. I don't know why the objects and stuff don't show up with like the, maybe they want you to drag them in? I don't know. All right, enough of that. So we'll just dial in some render settings here. Go back to something gray or white. Then we have our camera. I think overall this studio background stuff is just a little too close. I'm going to drop it down, make it bigger. And I think I can also make it a lot dimmer. The specular is a little distracting. So it's just something in there as like a gradient now. Yeah, then I don't know, maybe we could do depth of field, maybe. please. So I think it's might be able to control it in here. I think maybe as well they have it. Okay, so you can set it. Was that the shortcut that I was at, or was it? I feel like there's a click. I feel like there's a click. I feel like in one of the demos I saw like a click to focus thing. But we got something happening here. I feel like I've never been able to really get a super like wild blown out thing. Z will give it to you. But wasn't there, they were demoing like you could click on geometry to set the focal plane? Okay. So we have everything pretty much set up now. We should be able to do a little render. Let's have ourselves a little render. Okay, so yeah, I don't know about the color space stuff. Shift F. I don't know. Yeah, the ASUS stuff is nice. I do wish that they had a little bit more post effects capabilities of photographic exposure, tone mapping, or things like that. I think they have this bloom that's somewhat close to like a post effects thing. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's wants to show up for work today, but it would be nice to have some lens flares or stuff like that. But yeah, I think if we want to do like a preview render, you have a few options. You might be able to do a flip book like this and just blast away, kind of. Usually I turn off that resolution override. And we can give it a try like this. Yeah, usually, I mean, the Redshift one to me is looking a little better. Thank you. Yeah, it's a little gimmicky. I don't know. Let me do one quick thing before we get in here. Some people are starting to learn Houdini for lighting. I don't know. Are you having a laugh? Are you in here for memes? So the reason to learn Houdini for lighting would be because it's like similar to Katana. If you want to get through a lot of shots or a lot of assets efficiently, it plays with pipelines a lot more nicely than Maya or Cinema or that kind of stuff. That would probably be the biggest reason to adopt Houdini for lighting. Like as you can see here, there's it's a little more cumbersome because there's more bells and whistles, but because there is, if you wanted to churn through a bunch of shots or sequences or stuff like that. No, I could tell if it was. I would you happen to know why? Like, why would anyone put themselves through this? But I think it's slowly getting a little bit more polished, I would say. So let's just see what we're doing with our lights. What do you guys think is going on with the GI? We have our maybe this XPU stuff doesn't really do GI. yeah, I'm testing out some new stuff today. I just wanted to get the lighting working a little bit better before I started like with an actual render. Yeah, well, I think the diffuse bounces would basically be your GI bounces in this case, but yeah, in terms of irradiance caching and that kind of stuff, I don't think that they have that implemented. I think that's like some other renders like Arnold and Redshift and stuff, you have the ability to adjust your indirect and direct diffuse rays like independently, so you could boost the environment lighting or stuff like that. Yeah, I mean the dome light was turned off, but I was still expecting to see. I mean, I moved the studio light setup away quite a bit. I was expecting to see a little bit more just interaction, like this color bleeding over and stuff. Maybe I just need this to be a higher intensity or something. I don't know. So I'm just gonna try to spin this get a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't, these default HDRIs that they give you are not not the best, I would say, but we have something. All right, so let's pause this. Maybe we need to have it going. I'm gonna try the flip book. Push the pause button on it. I mean, it depends what your situation is, I would say, quite a bit. There's other ways of working with it as well. If you just want to work more at the SOP level, you can eliminate less of these chains and stuff like that. But yeah, if you're just an individual artist, I think sticking with sticking with Redshift, or I mean, this XPU portion of Karma is still beta stage. It's still very under development. So yeah, I don't know if it's really possible to. Yeah, the studio background I made, I think it is too far away maybe, but I did end up just increasing the intensity overall. But I feel like that's my color spaces here are obviously a mess. Um, I feel like that's the other. So close. That's the other reason to use the photographic exposure stuff, is because you're able to do some tone mapping, and you can even the color correction curves. You can like boost the darks a little bit more and stuff like that. So that's the other reason I was hoping to get a more robust post effects capabilities with Solaris, or I guess just with Karma more specifically. Because I think with the redshift, if you have it working properly, you can. Yes, I mean with ASUS you can always pull it into a compositing application, but for me, just doing streams, or like if you're working at a smaller scale, that definitely adds a lot of time if you're trying to, if you're getting a prompt from client or something like that, and they want to see like a couple versions by the end of the day, you kind of need to be doing everything all at once. Otherwise, it's if you're trying to like find the look for something, it's I feel, I don't know, I feel I don't have enough visual capability to like know what effects I'm going to be putting on it, and then like always have that in mind. I just like to see things kind of instantly or whatever, and be able to make changes and see the results quickly. Yeah, I might need to do a reboot. I did just install the new versions of Redshift and Houdini 19.5 without rebooting, so it could be something like that. But there's just a ton of new things as well that I'm testing today. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I've been sticking with Redshift, just because I know where everything is, and I'm not going to run into problems. But it is nice to be able to try some new things and explore some new capabilities and stuff like that. But yeah, to me, I think it's definitely somewhat far off. But to be able to have this show up in your viewport, and just one button here, I could click export USD, and someone using Maya or Cinema or something like that could open the scene and disable my lights or put in a new camera, and the shading properties would come across. Like, hopefully we'll be there one day. But yeah, I don't know. I think that this is like definitely not the proper. Jemplo, thank you for the prime. So yeah, and then I don't know. I mean, I think even overall the speed is, there's probably some stuff I could do to optimize it, but I think, I don't know, seeing some stuff in how quick things happen in some other applications and stuff like that could knock this render out even quicker. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for today. Maybe we'll just try to get into a little bit better composition, something more interesting. Oof. I feel like once you start turning on the depth of field, this some of this camera stuff gets a little bit finicky. Scene import camera. It's possible, yeah, there's still some issues like that. There's definitely some things that I've encountered as well that's like, you don't know if it's an issue or if it's a user error. If that's the other issue I would say is with using things that are in so much of like a beta stage, is you don't necessarily know what's your fault and what isn't. All right, let's put that there. Maybe we'll move our studio backdrop up a little bit. Ooh, just crash right into it. All right, I'm just gonna go a little higher with that stuff. Was anyone in here ever testing the Redshift like viewport? I think they have a like live viewport thing. Somehow my colors here are kind of borked out. These are a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, I'm not using Redshift right now, and I've been using it for a while. It works pretty well. Then the thing that they did that was interesting. I don't know if this is gonna mess everything up. Having more than one like renderer going at the same time, but they basically implemented their own like real-time viewport, so you can even still use it with let me just pause this, the old object context. So until this new stuff becomes more stable, that might be another thing worth looking into. So I went back to Houdini 19, where I know I have like a stable Redshift running for that. And so I think under the Redshift thing, they have this viewport IPR feature. The Houdini launcher. The champ is here. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Windows with paying for licenses from Microsoft, and I like being able to use the shell and run scripts and stuff like that. So let's just put a grid. We can do the RS light dome. maybe a test person, and bend this one. Bing, bing, bing. Spin it around. Depends what software you're trying to run. I mean, certain things won't even run on Linux. Like, I'm not using only Linux for everything. I'll use OS X or Macintosh for some design stuff, Photoshop or video editing or some things like that. But I think Linux is getting a little bit more capable in terms of doing the creative stuff with it. All right, we have a guy, we have the light dome. Yeah, so there's the make a camera. There he is. And we do the viewport IPR. And then maybe we probably want a light that's a little bit better than just the constant color white. The classic Barcelona rooftop. So this is another way that you can kind of work somewhat similar to Solaris. It's Redshift has implemented it like themselves, but you can arrange scenes and stuff like that and move around just in the Houdini viewport with this and do some toggles and stuff like that. And I would say for the time being, this is a pretty stable, interesting way of working as well. I usually will just work with the regular Redshift render view and just pause it or start it when I want to, and then when I'm laying out my scene, I'll just usually work with it in like the most visual way possible with not very many distractions. But it's up to you how you want to light. I'm not the best lighter, I would say, so I definitely have a good amount of stuff to learn in that regard. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today, I think. I think I'm gonna have to update my scene share script, but I'll post a link to this scene file that we were making in the stream archive channel of the Discord. So you should see it there. And other than that, let me know if you come up with any tricks for Solaris or with Karma or stuff like that. We might revisit some of this stuff as it becomes more stable, or as I'm able to get it to work stably with other render targets, or they call them the Hydra delegates or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept, and it's nice to move into more open universal standards and spend less time remapping paths and just like adapting assets to new pipelines. Like, there's no reason we should be this far behind in 3D. Like, you should be able to get assets and make a scene, and they should respond to light the way that they should, and there should be less of a headache and all that stuff. I'm definitely starting to use USD with work and some of this stuff. Definitely, as people are wanting to exchange scenes using exchange lighting setups or exchange things beyond the limbic, where you actually want to include some material assignments or like more advanced grouping mechanisms or more advanced attributes and things like that. USD is pretty powerful for that aspect of things. for the rendering, just like lighting side of things, I haven't been using it too much in that area, but it's a nice capability, and it's I don't know, it's like definitely a good viewer that they have with. Did I minimize it all? I think I just full screened this one. This scene graph tree. This is another nice way of like visually managing or seeing what you're creating, and keeping track of all your lights, and nice kind of modular. You can even turn on and off. I'm pretty sure you can. Did it go? I think I paused this one. You can light with that, so there's definitely some interesting aspects of it, and I'll definitely be planning to like spend more time trying it out. But this is where we are now. All right, I'm gonna sign off, and I'll be back on Friday. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Should be 8 p.m. Western Europe time if you're around Friday, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day today.